You're watching News 12, serving Westchester and the Hudson Valley. Now, Newsmakers.
Ayes 33, nays 29.
This week on Newsmakers, an historic decision. Gay marriage is now the law of the land here in New York State. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest edition of News 12's Newsmakers. I'm Janine Rose. Brian Coneybear is off this weekend. New York is now the 6th state in the nation to allow same-sex couples to wed. After massive protests and pressure from those on both sides of the issue, the long-awaited vote happened late 1 week ago Friday night, and within just a few weeks, gay couples will be allowed to tie the knot throughout the state and will have all the legal protections that go along with the institution. It is a huge victory for Governor Andrew Cuomo, who in just 6 months in office has managed to get gay marriage passed in a partisan legislature and a whole lot more. Joining us to talk about it all, two of our local state senators who took part in the historic decision. First, we want to welcome back to Newsmakers State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Ms. Cousins is a Democrat representing the 35th Senate District, covering Yonkers, Greenburgh, and Mount Pleasant. Ms. Cousins is in her 3rd term in the state Senate and voted in favor of the gay marriage legislation. We also welcome back State Senator Greg Ball. Senator Ball is a Republican serving in his 1st term in the Senate. He represents the 40th District in northern Westchester and Putnam, including Bedford, Yorktown, Brewster, and several more communities. He voted against the same-sex marriage bill after fighting to get certain protections in the bill for religious institutions. Senator Cousins, Senator Ball, thank you both for being here. A lot to talk about. You've been making a lot of news over the last several weeks here, so we appreciate your both being with us.
Thank you.
But first, for our viewers, a little background. Reaction poured in from all over New York after the gay marriage bill was passed, from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to the local lawmakers who made history by voting yes. It's all having a ripple effect well beyond the Empire State. News 12's Tara Rosenblum reported that story on Monday.
One of the world's oldest and largest gay pride parades turns into a carnival-like victory party Sunday. And that celebrating even seeped into Monday, with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton hailing New York's decision to legalize same-sex marriage as a historic human rights victory.
All people's rights and dignity must be protected, whatever their sexual orientation.
The historic vote late Friday came after many months of intense negotiations and backroom deals that ultimately forced lawmakers to pick between politics and their conscience.
Even up until the time I actually stood up and began to talk, I wasn't sure how I was going to vote.
And that's because for Senator Ruth Hassel Thompson Mount Vernon, the issue is deeply personal, torn between her feelings of sympathy for her deceased brother who was gay and the rest of her family who oppose gay weddings for religious reasons.
There was one of the pastors who said, you know, I look into your face and I know that you're a Christian in your heart and that you understand what the right thing to do. And I said, and I think the right thing to do has nothing to do with what I believe in terms of how I believe religiously or spiritually, but I think what I believe, which is fairness and justice for all people, and people have a right to make choices.
In the end, 4 Republicans agreed, crossing party lines, to vote yes to the Marriage Equality Act. A hard-fought political victory that has catapulted Governor Cuomo onto a national stage.
I believe New York has sent a message to this nation loud and clear. It is time for marriage equality all across this country.
So much to talk about. Again today, our guests, State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins and State Senator Greg Ball. Senator Cousins, we'll start with you, the Democrat. You did vote in favor of this bill. It is historic. We just saw so much emotion on both sides of the aisle here. Your take, why you voted yes, and do you believe this is honestly the right step for New York State?
Well, yes, I voted yes because since I got into public life, I've understood how important it is that people have the opportunities, that we be treated equally under the law. And I also understand that discrimination isn't good for anyone. The reality is that under the civil law, there is no reason that same-sex couples can't wed. And I came to this over time like everyone else because, I mean, we all are part of our society, and we reflect our society's views. And when I struggled with establishing the Human Rights Commission in Westchester County, it was the same thing. I came at it from a perspective of what happened when one of the major corporations, used disparaging remarks about their black employees, what happens when synagogues were defaced. And when we began the hearings, because Westchester County, with this 1 million people, had no Human Rights Commission at all, when we began the hearing, gay and lesbian people came up and said, well, what about us? We're going to be discriminated against. I'm afraid that people will find out that I'm gay, and I'll lose my job, I'll lose my housing. And all of a sudden, it opened, I think, everyone's eyes in the county that, wow, how can I say it's okay for you, but not for you? This has played out over the years, and people have begun to understand that the gay couples are raising children, and they have partnerships that have been sustained over decades, and at the end of the day, without some civil certification, they have no opportunities.
But you can't separate politics from this vote. You represent a liberal district, Yonkers, Greenburgh, Mount Pleasant. In the back of your head, you also have to be thinking that as a Democrat, if I had voted no on this legislation, it would probably hurt me in my next re-election bid.
Well,
correct?
Well, first of all, characterizing my district as liberal is probably a little simplistic.
But bottom line, there's still that political pull.
Well,
that's what I'm referring to.
We all do. We all have that. Each person who's elected has a political pull, but I think each person, as you saw Senator Hassel Thompson, has to understand that we are here to be deliberative, to be thoughtful. And obviously, politics plays out in every aspect of our life, right, whether it's here in the studio or. But I think that everyone voted their conscience because, for me, it's what I fought for since I've been in public service. So I know that the people who elect me understand that I'm a crusader for justice and equality.
And Senator Ball, on the flip side of that, you came to a no decision. Explain where you were on that vote and why you ultimately went in the negative.
I felt early on that it was probably a reality that we were going to see marriage equality this year. I felt that just in my conference that the votes were there. I thought that it was extremely important that we have an up or down vote. I think that both sides should realize that democracy happened. My majority leader in our conference could have said on many issues, like you see my good friend Shelley Silver in the Assembly, just kill bills. That bill did not have to come to the floor. But democracy did happen, and there was an up and down vote, and that takes a tremendous amount of leadership as well. And I'll tell you, there were members of my conference, and being, I thought it was important, to read the bill. The final bill didn't come out until that day. I also thought, since it was going to be a reality in my political opinion, that we fight for real religious protections. The governor first came back and said, no, there's really no need for religious protections. We built a little bit of a chorus up, various senators, including myself, saying, look, we really do need real religious protections. This bill has some of the strongest religious protections in the country. I think a lot of people out there also have to realize is that we had a system where those who were married, same-sex couples married out of state, were recognized in New York State. Also, same-sex couples could can adopt in New York State. So we had a policy where we allowed individuals to adopt. We allowed them to be recognized if they got married out of state, but then we weren't allowing them to be married in this state. It was very disconcerting, I'll tell you, watching the polarization of this debate. Being undecided, I heard from both sides, and I was basically just threatened by both sides for weeks. Those on the right said, how can you even consider, and said, if you vote for it, I'll never support you again. Now here I am, solid on many of the issues that they care about, and those on the left.
Well, that's the politics we're talking about. But in the end, you stood up and said that those religious protections did not go far enough for you and ultimately voted no.
I think there are a couple things. One, the religious protections for institutions, those are in the bill. Those are pretty clear. There are now religious protections for religious organizations that were not in the bill. They were, to some extent, carved out, but many of these religious organizations are incorporated under the not-for-profit law. They had no protections on the governor's initial bill. The final category that I wanted protected were individuals with religious objections. It's the toughest needle to thread. But I'll give you an example. A town clerk or a justice of the peace that has strongly held religious beliefs should they decide not to partake in a same-sex religious ceremony, the town could be sued, they could lose their job. And those are the real issues that we're going to be seeing play out in the state.
Senator Cousins, let me ask you about those religious protections. Do you feel the bill goes far enough and will protect those who, have religious objections to marrying same-sex couples?
Well, listen, we would be naive in thinking that people who, have strong religious feelings one way or the other would feel protected enough. But the reality is this bill says that you cannot be sued if the Knights of Columbus say, I don't want to rent my hall for the celebration of a same-sex marriage. Obviously, as Senator Ball said, the clergy and so on and so forth. I think what Senator Ball is talking about, and as he said, it's a difficult needle to thread. I had someone come up to me who said, well, what about judges? Suppose, and I'm saying, well, how did a judge get there? Right. Well, the judge is elected. Well, now the judge is doing the public business, right. And it's the same thing with municipal employees. They have to do what the public dollars pays them to do, and I know that Senator Ball was trying to get even that done, but I mean, listen, we can play that out anywhere. Somebody decides that they don't want to serve black people, for example, because it's some conviction that they have, so therefore they don't have to do it in a restaurant. So I mean,
what's fair under the law?
Exactly, and this is this is what we're talking about. What's fair under the law? You're a private person, privately, but when you are a public servant, whatever your role is, the reality is the public, all of the public,
Senator
pays
Ball,
you to do your job.
I do want to ask you the same really question that I posed to Senator Cousins. Your district is certainly much more conservative. You were elected as a Republican conservative. Right. It tends to be heavily Republican in how they vote. It probably would not have been politically astute for you at this time to have voted yes.
Not only
and
that,
expect to get reelected. Is that fair for me to say?
I think it's very fair, and I also think you do have to represent your district, and we have that responsibility. Now there are times that maybe you fall on a sword at the end of the day, but I can tell you that some of the Republican senators who voted yes, they're going to have very tough times. They're not going to have the conservative line. I took on the Conservative Party my last time. Did a write-in campaign, won that write-in campaign 3-1. It's not easy. I know it from firsthand. And they may have Republican primaries. So all their newfound friends that said, go ahead, you jump off the cliff, I'm going to be there for you, I hope they stand there by those Republican senators. Because from my opinion, I didn't go to Albany to focus on the social issues. I went there to cap property taxes, which we did, get the budget in line. Those are the economic issues I want to focus on.
But let me ask you, and I'll be interesting to hear what you both have to say, but particularly Senator Ball, you are now seen as something of the golden child in the Republican Party, particularly since we saw Senator Lidell's conviction and he's not there anymore. And you're already being talked about as a potential candidate for higher office. So let's just say in a few years, and none of us have a crystal ball, of course, but if you were to run for U.S. Congress or U.S. Senate, or someday either one of you, the potential of running for governor, are you not concerned that no vote on gay marriage could really impact your future potential to run in New York?
Well, two things. I'll say, well, at the end of the day, I have a solid pro-gay voting record on gay rights. I just have. I have gone above and beyond, even co-sponsoring legislation in the Assembly to help expand all the benefits before we had gay marriage for domestic partnerships. And moving forward, I will continue to do exactly that. You know what? I represented my district. I can see it from both sides. I'm a 33-year-old young leader. I can tell you that when you looked at the intensity, if that same intensity was focused on jobs and taxes that we saw in the state capitol, we could really move this state forward.
It was an emotional issue. And Ms. Cousins, you also have been mentioned for higher office, and I don't know necessarily that it would have been politically astute for either one of you to have voted no. Certainly a Democrat probably would not be able to get reelected to higher office with the, for lack of a better word, the milieu right now, which was, of course, pro-gay marriage in New York. At least it appeared to be.
Well, you know, it appeared to be, and I think poll after poll clearly showed that the majority of New Yorkers were moving in the direction where they believe that marriage equality was what New York represented. I mean, New York is a progressive state. I mean, the women's movement started here in Seneca Falls. The NAACP was founded in New York. And as Senator Bull was saying, the expansion of rights for the LGBT community was very clearly moving with the SONDA, which first in the 1980s, it was just non-discrimination in terms of sexual orientation within state government. And then in 2002, after Westchester County passed its laws, we expanded it throughout the entire state. So, I mean, clearly, the reality is that people were moving towards A, being a progressive state, and B, recognizing that equal justice under the law is just the right thing for New York.
We're going to move on, but I just want to ask you both quickly, do you think now that New York became the 6th state, are we going to see other states topple, for lack of a better word? Will we see gay marriage passed quickly in other states, Ms. Cousins?
I think that I hope that what we will see in other states is exactly what we saw here in New York.
A discussion.
Democracy playing out.
You know what? I think that 20 years from now, you're certainly going to see this moving in the direction it did in New York State, but I don't think it's a great issue for Governor Cuomo, who has national aspirations. I really don't. I don't think that that's a platform you run on. You know, we could have passed the most comprehensive civil union legislation that the country's ever seen. That's where the debate is really right now at the heart of it. And the governor did come from the extreme left on this issue. I don't think that that's a winning issue in many states out west and down south, but we'll see. You're
bringing us to a great segue. We're going to talk about Governor Cuomo and his political future as a result of all this, but we've got to talk about a lot more, including the tax cap, when we come back here on Newsmakers. Gay marriage not the only bill passed here in New York.
This is going to end the madness finally once and for all.
Governor Cuomo signs New York's new property tax cap into law right here in the Hudson Valley, but still not everyone is happy about that measure as well. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to News 12's Newsmakers. I'm Janine Rose. Gay marriage was not the only major legislation signed into law in Albany this past several days. Governor Cuomo was in Westchester on Thursday to sign New York's new property tax cap into law. The 2% tax increase limit is meant to give homeowners some relief, but there are detractors who think the cap could severely hurt local governments and already struggling school districts. News 12's Tim Cassidy reported that story.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Governor Andrew Cuomo in Pleasantville Thursday afternoon, a stop at the home of Russell and Tara Klein to sign his property tax cap bill into law. The Kleins and their 4 boys live in a modest home and pay more than $16,000 a year in property taxes. They're now cautiously optimistic.
We're hopeful that, our community, people can still afford to live in our community, which is becoming difficult for a lot of people.
We're hoping that this is just a starting point and that he will continue to work with schools.
The law will cap property taxes at 2% a year or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. A big change from previous years in New York where 5 or 7% increases were the norm.
We have been the high tax state for too long, and there is no future for this state as the tax capital of the nation. And today we're going to make that change.
And with the stroke of a pen, it became law. But not everyone believes it's the right thing for New York, including Republican Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino.
It's a good step forward. I applaud him. I applaud the legislature for doing some positive things. But beyond a beautiful headline, there's a very bad story that could be written real soon if they don't curb their spending habits.
In Westchester, almost 3/4 of every dollar goes to the state for mandated programs like Medicaid. To that, the governor says,
they have a point, and we are working. We've reduced many of the mandates already. We're going to be working with the local governments to reduce even more mandates.
The governor calls the new law the antidote to a 40-year problem here in New York, one he hopes is going away.
This is going to end the madness finally once and for all.
Ending the Madness. Again, our guests today are State Senator Greg Ball and State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Senator Ball, you had called for a tax cap when you campaigned for the Senate seat. Were you happy to see that this really became something of a nonpartisan issue in the end?
You know, this is great. We focus on the social issues, or not we, but many times the media and in the Capitol, you would think there was nothing else going on. When I came back into my district, people were like, what about that tax cap? Is that going to get done? I mean, in the big fury of everything, people don't even realize that this was passed. Over time, this will do more to really right-size what has become a nightmare for many families. Many families, the American dream of owning a home has become a nightmare for them. We've lost 2 million New Yorkers that have left the state because they just can't keep up with the property taxes. There are issues with this. There's no doubt that we'll be back at the table to try to fix some of the things. There's $127 million in unfunded mandate relief. The Senate fought for over $250 million. The Assembly fought us back on that, but we need to usher in more unfunded mandate relief. But I'm going to tell you, I fought for this in the Assembly when I was in the state legislature, even when I was campaigning for that. The teachers' unions came out hard against it at that time, and it's good to see that this governor was able to move the ball forward. And it's a strong cap, I mean, compared to what we've seen in other states. But this is going to keep people in their homes, seniors, working families. If we accomplish nothing else in session, in my opinion, besides a balanced budget in this, it is a hell of a legislative session.
Senator Cousins, it should not go unnoticed that the governor came to your district. Basically, you were standing right there next to him to get this capped. How symbolic is it that the governor did come to Westchester County, considered the highest tax county in the country, one of certainly. You know, it was obviously intentional that he signed it here.
Absolutely. You know, I think that, again, the short excerpt pretty much said what people understand. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that they want to pay more taxes. And he campaigned on that. I introduced the governor yesterday, and basically I said, this is a governor that campaigned on certain issues, this being his top priority, and he got all of those things done. The reality is that the house where we were, that particular family was paying far more than what the average you know, resident of the United States pays. So clearly there is an issue. I will say, and I continue to say, as everyone else says, that we have to work with local governments to not just, you know, cap their ability to raise taxes, but to find ways to remove some of the mandates rather that continue to cause the need to spend more.
You represent the city of Yonkers. Just last week in that chair, Mayor Amiconi, as well as the school superintendent in Yonkers, Bernard Perazio, sat here. Both said this tax cap is going to severely damage communities that are struggling like Yonkers, school districts like Yonkers that are struggling. But we heard that really across the board in the Hudson Valley. A lot of school superintendents are very worried because they, even when they have people vote, you know, they can get tax increases of 4 or 5, in some cases double digits we've seen the last few years. Will this decimate the school districts? Both of you. I mean, I'm asking both, but go ahead, Senator
No,
Ball.
it's not. I mean, it's always the sky is falling.
Right.
And we'll deal with it. We're going to be okay. But I'll tell you what's devastating. What's devastating are double-digit tax increases forcing seniors out of their home at the very moment when they should be able to enjoy the homes that, you know, and age in place and stay in those homes. And, you know, even from an economic perspective, people have to realize every time a senior citizen is forced out of their home, many times, as cute and cuddly as those little kids are, a family moves in with a couple of kids at $20,000, $25,000 per per kid in cost to the school district. So it makes sense to keep those seniors in their home. Plus, working families. You know how many people that are my age living in their parents' basement because they can't afford to live in the community,
absolutely.
or they just leave the state altogether. So are there going to be tough decisions that are going to have to be made? Absolutely. But guess what? Every homeowner in New York State is making tough decisions every single day, and school districts should not be exempt from making those tough decisions.
I want to ask you both something we have to get to. I want to ask both state senators about Andrew Cuomo now being hailed as a hero for getting so much done in Albany in such a short time, 6 months. An on-time budget was passed through the legislature. Ethics reform legislation is in place. The property tax cap, as we just discussed, passed. And, of course, the gay marriage bill. And that led to a lot of talk this week that Andrew Cuomo could be a serious candidate for president in 2016. This is what the governor himself had to say about it.
Governor, you seem to have good momentum going on in Albany. Do you take that and make a run for the White House?
I take that and keep trying to do the best job I can as governor. The speculation about running for president, what people are really saying, in my opinion, is they're reacting to the magnitude of the accomplishments in Albany.
Magnitude of the accomplishments, Senator Cousins. I mean, you know, we saw under Andrew Cuomo's leadership in 6 months, we saw the Senate get stuff done that they were not able to tackle over several years. You know, a feather in his cap. Could he be a presidential candidate?
Well, I think that strong leadership is the key here. And I just wanted to go back to talk about school funding. I don't think that there is a question that there is more work to be done. And schools, education, quality education, and funding matters. And I'm sure all of my colleagues and the governor will work to make sure that we correct the things that are wrong in terms of making sure education, because education matters. Now, as far as this particular, I have been, as we've said, I've been in 4.5 years. I've had 3 governors. Right. This I have never seen before.
Senator Ball, you get the last word here.
Our conference has been a good partner with this governor. Now, this governor is running as a Republican, light and strong in some instances. He's running on our agenda, tax cap, balanced budget. Now, if we could focus on job creation, it'd be a nice thing.